All right, let's get this party started. Hope everyone's doing amazing today. We're going to go through the market, kind of what's going on, my thoughts, and everything in between. If you want me to go through a coin or you want me to look at a stock or whatever, just let me know what it is and I'll take a look at it and give my thoughts on where it's at. Remember, everything on this broadcast and stream isn't financial advice. I'm just some guy on the internet talking into a microphone. So take everything with a grain of salt and let's step into the action. So let me know if you can see my screen. Just comment down below if you can see my screen, or comment in the comments if you can see my screen. What's up? Lucas turning in from Germany. Good to have you. So let's just kind of take a look at the overall market sentiment. Not much has changed since last week. We're still on 73 in the fear and greed index. So we're still fairly greedy, but we're not like insane yet. We're not euphoric, for lack of a better term. When we look at what's been trending, PRB actually had a pretty nice run and then a colossal breakdown too. It was pretty interesting to watch. It went just straight up and then straight down. You can see it in the chart right here. Metis has had a pretty good run. Say was a great run. Bonk has been doing decently. Obviously did great in the last 30 days. AVAX, Solana, a lot of the players, Internet Computer, Polygon. So a lot of these guys have been trending. Looks like ARB wants to really start making new highs. Ordi, we got into in the Dudes server. Still in that trade. That's been a really good one. We've pretty much hit the entire thing. Kind of where we're at, though, in terms of the market itself, I think we just hit a fresh leg. Let's look at the crypto market first. We just hit a fresh leg for this to load. And so now we're kind of waiting to see if there's continuation or if we're going to form a new range, see where the new low is, where the new high is, and ultimately kind of push on from where we were. We were stuck in that previous range for pretty much the entire month of December. So it was nice to see the breakout finally happen. And it was interesting how it happened at the beginning of the year. Let me turn some of these things off. So pretty much what happened recently was, when we look on the daily, like I've been talking about previously, we were essentially stuck in this range since basically December 5th. We had this nice breakout where we went from this range that we were stuck in right here to right here, where we broke out. basically on December 1st. And then we had a couple of days of nice price action till December 5th. And then we went sideways, which is kind of characteristic of what 2023 really was about. Like this was the only range where we kind of went up. So this one we went into on October 25th, broke out of that in December 1st. That was kind of an upward range, which was nice. Before that, we had this range that we got stuck in. So this was the really challenging period of 2023 for a lot of people to trade. But we would basically break out of a range, have like 5 days of good action, then just sideways and dump, then break, sideways, dump, break, sideways, dump, break, sideways, down, dump, break. Pretty much, we're doing this a similar thing, except we're not really breaking to the downside before the big push. And I think that kind of trips up a lot of traders. But where we're at now is typically we'll break. We'll have a couple of days of good break, then sideways action. Same thing here. We basically broke here on December 1st, started going sideways on December 5th, stayed sideways the entire month of December. Now we broke. And at this point, we're trying to see if we have continuation. It would be a little surprising if there wasn't a lot of continuation on this. I mean, look at this break. So when we look back here, we had the break and then we peeled back and then we went 1-2 days of kind of downward action. And then we had the additional break where we actually kind of officially broke out and then we pushed into the next range. So I think that's probably what we'll do here. Everybody's kind of trying to long this right now and go crazy. But as you can see, we already had a little bit of a blow off. When we look at the 12-hour, we had a decent close. So we're good here. But now what is probably going to happen, looking at this 1 hour, is we're sitting in this range now. So we had the initial break. Now we're going to sit in this range. We're testing this here to see if we could miraculously bounce off the 1 hour and continue the range to like 47K zone. But if we can't hold that, then what we'll do is we'll come down and we'll test the 4 hour. So we'll just push down to 4 hour, pump, and then probably drive up. But imagine this would be at this point, probably the most likely scenario. And that would give us on the daily, if we mark this, that would put us about right here. So we'd have a couple of days of price action drive. That would, right now, that would put us in the point of retesting that breakout zone or pretty close to it. I think if we go a couple of days of sideways or we go sideways for a little bit, it'll give time for that 4 hour to catch up. There's obviously the possibility of us actually just breaking and pushing from here. But I think what might potentially happen is we come here, we go flat, and then boop, and we drive. Yeah, something like that. It would really suck if we just kind of fell right back through, because then it would be a fake breakout. But that's something to pay attention to. That's kind of what I'm looking at right now. Just looking at the daily, it's kind of a similar break to what happened down here. So push, reset, couple of days of sideways, literally 2 days, and then breakout on the third day. So probably something like that to kind of look out for. If we come back and look at what it looked like back then, when we had that breakout. So that's where we're at now. We had this breakout, and then essentially we broke and then kind of went sideways, broke, kind of went sideways, and just grinded up. So we're probably in a similar scenario. Seems like BTC at this point, it has these big drives and then these nice sideways patterns. I would imagine we could potentially form a new range that's from like 44 to 47 until we see some sort of ETF approval. But big thing is we just want to see continuation. Like I said, it'll probably go here. It'll probably flatten out, go here, give this time to catch up, and then we'll probably punch and push. Obviously, if we fall through, that would suck. But at this point, it doesn't look like that will be the case. Like we had a good weekly close last week. So everything looks good at this point. We're just kind of waiting to see where we go next and where the new range is formed. Obviously, it's been a great few months, so nothing concerning there. That when we look at the ETH picture, similar thing. Let's go to one that doesn't have 744,000. Oh, they all do. Let's just erase some of these things. So when we look at the ETH picture, it's kind of a similar scenario. basically ETH will be the thing that, like I said last time, that'll just break out and then teleport straight up. So ETH had the nice little, we basically grinded all the way down to about 2266, and I hit a good long down here in this zone when we finally touched. And then we essentially pushed back up. Now we're testing this break zone. We're testing the 4 hour on ETH. So what I would anticipate, we don't get like a nice double top here and just go right back down into range, is ETH would push and drive, and it gives us another push up for ETH into the 2,500 range. So far, it doesn't look like it's not really in a bad place. Not necessarily the best look right here on the daily from today, because it kind of erased our entire movement. So what we're kind of hoping is we hold here. We are already kind of on top of that 4 hour range. 12 hour is holding. So as long as we hold there, I think we have the potential maybe to grind sideways for a little bit, maybe come down, touch here, then push back up. But ultimately, not a horrible picture either. When we look at the RSI across the board, it's just kind of, it's not bad. It's just trying to figure out a place to break. ETH just goes sideways for the rest of our lives and then eventually teleports up. So it's kind of where we're at there. Notable strength, I think, in the market. Actually, let's look at stocks before. NASDAQ had let's look at QQQ. So NASDAQ had one of its worst openings to the year in a long time, or maybe historically today. But the good news that I kind of saw here was SPY touched on like its daily trend line and had a pretty good wick off of it. So that put us in a pretty good zone, which might put us in that zone to where now that we have this wick and this drive, we'll probably retest it tomorrow and then give us the strength to come back up and test this high again. Similar story with QQQ. It's a little bit of a worse position, but it did wick off the bottom of the daily trend, which probably pushed. We'll come back down and retest and hopefully push back up to test the top of the range. If we fall through, then, well, we just plummet down to probably come back down here. If that doesn't hold, we come back down and test here, but ultimately wasn't the greatest day for stocks. Anyway, let's look at crypto. Notable coins that I think did really well today. Maker has been on a tear. It finally just kind of broke out of this just grinding down pathway. It's just been like very slowly grinding up, which has been a challenge to even think about trading, but had a nice push today. What I think I'd probably look at if I wanted to get a position as Maker is it testing this like this range here. So like 1739 to 1770 is what I'd look to see. If it loses this, then the range isn't going to continue. But if it bounces, then it has more juice in it. Another one that had a lot of strength today, Ordi, still doing quite well. I'm still in this trade. Like we got into this one in dudes, I think, somewhere around like 74, I think. Maybe lower, 73, 74-ish. And now we're pushing here. Said we're going to meme to upper 90s-ish, maybe 100, see what happens. Other coins that have been strong that are notable to look at. Rune is starting to show a little bit of strength. As we can see, it's starting to push out of that trend. So what typically happens with a lot of these coins is they'll bounce off their bottom range and then they'll drive, they'll get sideways and they'll peel over. This one kind of fell through everything, but it regained that 1 hour, which tells me it probably has potential for another for another leg up. Good entry would have been like right here to like right here. Stop loss right here-ish. Let's see. SWE, I think, did really. Band actually looks really good. When I look at Band on like the weekly time frame, it's breaking out of this. So it's been in this consolidation pattern, just getting stuck here with this top line resistance holding it back since like, I mean, this thing hasn't been able to break since 2022. This is a pretty long-term consolidation. So this long-term, I'm holding this for weeks, months, maybe. It's in the position to push like pretty hard because it's been stuck for so long. I mean, we're looking at first zones like 277, then it's kind of blue skies from there. So once it clears this, then I think we have a lot of potential for a pretty big move for Band. When you look at here, next leg up, it's like 341. Then we're looking at the fours and looking at the 4 to 5s. So it should be a pretty good run if it can hold this. So what I would like to see on Band is it holds this zone. on the weekly close. So holds above like the 2.133 zone between like 2063 to 2.136. So I may even buy this spot since I think it's in a really good place. Band basically does the same thing as Link, so it's kind of following in Link's footsteps. Let's see, there was one more that did really well. Sweet, whatever you say it, but this thing took off finally. When we look at it on the daily trend, it finally broke this like consolidation area here, and now it's just taking off and it's moving into blue skies. So basically we have maybe resistance at 0.96, again between 1.0599 and like 1.0762. Then obviously top line resistance 1.17. Then we've got blue skies, but this is a pretty solid weekly candle we're looking at here. And if you look at how this move started happening, the move, it basically grinded all the way down to the daily trend, confirmed, bounced, and then drove and took off. So now this was a pretty fresh move, I think. So when we look at where it's at, it essentially grinded down, finally pushed off. So now what I would look for, because this is it looks like a pretty fresh trend, I would look for it to start to maybe push a little more, then start to go sideways and then peel over and then catch the hourly trend as the hourly catches up. So it's probably going to be somewhere around like maybe somewhere around like 0.91 to like 0.9066 ish. We're just waiting for these EMA bands to catch up. So 13 and the 24. So or 13 and 21. Once those catch up, you can hopefully you catch that on the bounce and you can continue to ride the trend. So you don't always have to catch the trend off the like the big daily bounce. So you can say, okay, well, what I like to do is if I miss this and it's already here, there's no way I'm FOMOing into that, but I can go here. And if it hasn't had a bounce off of it yet, then I can catch the bounce and the continuation of the trend. And if it falls through, the trend's over. So something to pay attention to on that. Yield games, pretty good trend. So this one, similar situation, kind of like grinded down for days and then finally fell through and drove and created a bounce. But now it's looking at resistance right here. So it's got to clear that. If it does, then we're probably same situation that I would be looking for if I wanted to enter, would be waiting for the hourly trend to catch up and then catch it off the bounce. GMT, another fresh trend that I think is developing. This is actually in a similar scenario. So daily did the same thing, kind of grinded down till it touched, bounce, drove. Now we're in this new up pattern. So now what I would come back to is look at, okay, how many times has it bounced off this? Well, let's see. Okay, the initial drive, 1, initial drive, 2. So you might be able to get one more out of it. Otherwise, we want to start looking at kind of moving to the upper time frames to catch the trend, like the 4 hour, to say, okay, well, when this one catches up, this one will give it enough to give it a decent bounce off of there. Conflux, another one. So remember what these notable strength coins are with strength. So that way, when we have these dumps, we know which ones to look at. I mean, you can see the beautiful thing here. It's like trend created, come up, test the 1 hour, push. So now it's trying to create this fresh rally. Let me know if there's any coins you want me to look at in the chat. ICP, MAV, another good one to look out for. So these two have created sort of fresh trends. It'll probably look, probably look to like the 4 hour to catch this one. And then MAV, I think, is pretty fresh. So this one would be one to look at on the 1 hour to catch the continuation. So as it starts to go sideways and then dip, probably in this zone, to grab that one. Scale, another one. Notice how this one created the push and then fell through. So this would have been like my entry. And if I didn't have a trade on this one, but I would have put a stop down here somewhere, probably got stopped out on that continuation. Then I'd look to this one for getting back into it or attempting to do it again. RSI looks like it's going to come back down and bounce. So before I got into something like this, I'd probably wait to see a nice reset. Same thing here. There's no real reset. That's kind of like a limp noodle sitting there. I'd like to see this hit and then drive really sharply up, and that would give me more confidence to enter something like that. But let's check the chat. Thoughts on Say. Say had a great trend. I think it's looking pretty tired at this point. Let's pull up the chart. find it in here somewhere. Yeah, right here. So it had a pretty good rally. I mean, looking at it, it was great. It pushed, hit the 1 hour, pushed, hit the 1 hour, had a really big push, and then now it's falling through the 1 hour. So that's sort of concerning. If it comes back and it can catch this might be in a good zone, especially because these bands are getting really tight together. So if it comes up and tests this again, it could give it the strength to just push right through it. That's something to look out for when we look at the 4 hour. It did actually wick very nicely off of it. So that would have been a decent entry. Would have been, I would have, if I was going to enter this, I had a position here. I sold it up here. I would have looked 0.69 to like 0.65. I would have maybe had bids in there and then a stop loss down here, which would have hit this bid and then probably put it into instant profit. And then you can kind of pay attention to where it's at from there. But if it can bounce off of there, you're in a good spot because already it's pretty high up. But I do think it's getting a little tired. Like looking at the RSI, there's no reset. I mean, it still wants to be bearish. So I would anticipate this continues to bleed to at least here. Who knows though? Obviously, can't tell what something's going to do. If this one went down again and wicked hard or it closed and came up, then we'd probably get a nice little reset, which is what I would be looking for. But for right now, it doesn't look like there's any sort of reset and where this entire candle has basically been erased, which is concerning. So maybe not the best choice to jump into now. I think a better choice that's similar would be SWE, however you say it. It's on sort of a fresh trend. So I would be looking for maybe an entry on this one coming through on the 1 hour here. If it can hold that, great. If not, then I would look for an entry on this one, maybe on the 4 hour to continue this trend. 4 hours probably not going to give you an entry in any reasonable time frame. You'd probably be looking here and then something in this zone. But I think this is in a better spot. Notice how this one came down. See that like sharp reset? That gives me confidence that another trend's developing. Let's check the 1 hour, even the 1 hour, there's that reset. And then we're kind of peeling back. So now we'd either expect it to push, or if this closes this way, we're probably going to expect it to come down and maybe reset off the 50, which would be great because then that gives us a nice fresh trend. Like look here, reset off the 50, push back up, reset off 50, push back up. The only thing that would be bad there is it's build this sort of divergence if it's in that spot, which would be bearish, but it's only an hour, so it wouldn't be really a huge deal. Let me know if there's any other questions or anything you want me to look at. Post those in the chat and I will check them out. Looking at some other things, some things that I've had in my watch list recently. I like Render. Notice how though it didn't have a decent bounce. It fell through on the 50, and then guess what happens when it falls through on the 50? We go all the way down. Now we're sitting on the 1 hour 200 EMA, which technically if it holds this would be a great entry because it's at the rock bottom. When we look at the 4 hour, we can see that it's kind of just chilling here. So if it closes there, then it'll come back up and test that 4 hour trend. TRB, not saying this was insane. This thing started pushing. It was like 137. Then all of a sudden it was 500. Then all of a sudden it was right back down to 137. Absolutely wild. Another interesting thing too, if you're like longing coins or paying attention, if you want Bitcoin, but you think it's too big, or if someone thinks it's too big to get into, or ETH, the alternative to Bitcoin is STX because it's kind of like it gives you the exposure and a lot bigger moves because it's an altcoin. The alternative to ETH is going to end up being like ARB, which looks really good, by the way. I didn't even talk about ARB, but ARB is kind of moving in that sideways pattern here. So what could happen is this could catch up and then this could dump and push and give us a nice trend off there. It's trying to push off that hourly. It's not doing a great job right now. Notice how there was a fresh reset, but it's kind of peeling back over. It tells me we're going to test this again, which tells me we're likely going to come through at some point and test this 4 hour trend. But another alternative to ETH that works really well is OP. The other last one is LDO. So notice how this one's sitting on the bottom is 4 hours. So if it loses that, we likely come back down and test here. But those are good ones. So if someone wants exposure to these two, then STX for Bitcoin and then OP for ETH or ARB or even LDO. Let me know any other coins you want me to look at in the chat. Post them up. There's a few people watching. So if you want me to look at something, let me know. Let's see if there's any other notable coins. Let's look at some what's sort of popping in the industry. Actually, before we get into that, let's just look macro. So a lot of people ask me where I think this thing's going. Honestly, nobody has a real idea. Everybody's just kind of a lot of people talk about how they predict things and they understand it, and nobody has any idea. They're just making an educated guess based on what the charts look like. So for me, it would make sense to come in and test like this region 46.4 would be a pretty big zone. And then we've got 47.2, 46.4 to 47.2 are pretty solid zones. After that puts us kind of in this zone, like 48.5 up to about 49.2. When we look at what the order blocks look like, let's go into the daily for this. There we go. When we come into here, and let me know if while I'm doing this, let me know if there's anybody who has anything they want me to look at in the chat. It's not working. That's all right. What I think will happen, or what we're probably looking at, is kind of the zones I was talking about. We're holding 45 decently. Still think there's a potential to grind for a couple of days. So I think that's where most people get chopped up. But then this like 46.3 to like this 47.2 is a pretty big zone. That'll have a well, tough time getting through that. Then we're looking at like this, we're looking at like 49-ish up to about 50,900 would be another big zone. I would anticipate if the ETF is approved, you probably end up somewhere in that zone, 48 to like 54. And then maybe that's where we get our first correction. I don't necessarily know if it's a sell the news event. Well, I guess you could call it a sell the news event, but historically we'll hit this first push and then we'll have like a decline. We'll come down. So from here, if we look at the weekly, I would anticipate if we had that push, we'd probably our first spot to test would probably somewhere around like the 38 to 36 zone. If we lose that, then we start looking at the 31, like 30, 31 zone, which would provide a pretty big bounce, maybe some sideways action and then continuation. So it's kind of where I think we would be heading as soon as that picks up. But that's it. That's all I've got to say. If there's anything else you want me to look at, let me know. Otherwise, let's keep doing it. We'll do these streams once a week. Still, things that are trending, Solana ecosystem, BRC20, gaming, nothing's really changed there. These are kind of like the top performing ecosystems right now. So definitely things to look at, like gaming, DePIN. When we look at like this zone is like internet computers, the top. This is like Filecoin based stuff, like data storage. So we've got Filecoin, Renders DeFi, Theta is like video streaming, BitTorrent, file streaming. We got Helium Network. But the biggest performers in here, as we can see, are internet computer. We've got Filecoin. And then as we come down, we can start to see similar projects like Pocket Network is up. We can start to see a lot of the data storage stuff. has been going up, which I think will be a pretty big. This is another one similar to Filecoin, but a lot smaller. So market cap's only 33 million. So I think we'll start to see the data coin, data storage stuff have a pretty big drive and narrative as we come into this thing. When we look at the gaming's not really taking off too much. Typically what I'll do is I'll look at like, okay, is IMX taking off? Not too much, not really. It's kind of cooling off. So then that means a lot of the lower end stuff won't. We see GMT is a Cetify a little bit, but nothing's really going absolutely crazy. Things are over in like data storage. We're a lot higher up, looking a lot better. Over here, we've got a few things doing well, but typically if the leaders aren't mooning, then the littler ones aren't either as well. So when we look at BRC20, 40 up 22%. So the leader is doing well. SAT's not so much, but Orti's kind of doing decently well. So we start looking down here. Okay, what else is doing well? And then we can kind of see if Orti's doing well, maybe it's the memes on BRC20 they're going to pump. So we want to kind of start looking down. You don't have to go completely down there, but you can start looking at like this is such a young area. You can pretty much pick anything and it'll move eventually. But we want to kind of start getting an eye on what has strength. Like you look at OXBT, in 24 hours, it's up 23%, but then it's down 20% in 7 days. So it's kind of regained what it's lost. Solana, similar story. Sol's doing okay. It's at 107. 116 is kind of a big resistance zone. So I think that's what I would look at for that. But when we come down into the Solana ecosystem, a lot of this isn't, but we've got Marinade Stake Sol up 104% just because Sol's pushing. And then we've got, let's see, some of these 98%. I don't know if this is a Sol project. I mean, if there's any, let me check chat. Any other coins you want me to look at, drop them down below. I'll probably cut this off pretty soon, but look at Myro. No information about it. But sometimes you can find some pretty good hidden gems. Like I found Shadow just kind of looking at the Solana ecosystem, and I bought that and I called that in dudes, and we're up 100% on that on spot. So you just buy it, don't have to do anything, which was pretty amazing. So stuff to pay attention to. You can really find some gems down here that have lower market caps and that have the potential to really push quite well. So something to pay attention to. But that's it. That's pretty much all I've got to say. If there's any more coins, just comment down below. But otherwise, I am going to cut out. I will talk to you.